Hey, welcome back to the InNOLEvation Mindset Podcast, powered by the Moran College of Entrepreneurship. I am Rosella Cruz, your host today, and you may be surprised to see your usual host, Dr. Mark McNees, sitting in the guest seat today for our faculty spotlight. How are you doing today, Dr. McNees?
I'm doing great, Rosella, and just call me Mark.
Perfect. So, Mark, you're usually sitting here in this seat where I am, interviewing a guest about their entrepreneurial journeys.
I know, it's weird.
I know, isn't it? Well, we want to know a little bit more about you. We heard that you started your first business at 10. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah. When I was 10 years old, there were new gaming systems. It was called Atari, and InNOLEvation, that was kind of the Xbox, PlayStation of my generation. It was brand new. And it was kind of interesting because our parents didn't really understand games. Up to that point, games were like you'd buy Monopoly or Chutes and Ladders, and then you would just have that game forever, right? And they didn't really understand the idea of, most parents didn't understand the idea of buying a console and then you would get different games and you just have to keep on buying. Plus, back then, the games were really, really simple. So what I saw, the problem that I saw was my friends and I were beating these games really fast, but our parents would only buy us one because they were expensive and they didn't really get it. So we wanted to play new games. So what I started doing was I was asking my friends, I'm like, hey, you've beat that game? And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, oh, can I borrow it? And they're like, sure. Well, I would borrow it for a while. And then what I started doing was renting it to my other friends for 25 cents a day. And so they would have it. So I started renting video games, and it grew to a point where I stopped bringing books to class, and in my backpack it was just full of games, and did really, really well. I was 10 years old, and it was my first entrepreneurial experience. And then the school found out, and they shut me down. So it's kind of funny, I'm in the College of Entrepreneurship now that would celebrate such behavior, but back in the day when I was 10 years old, that they did not smile on such behavior.
I like that. I think that's a very good way. I mean, that just tells you that you are an entrepreneur at heart and not something that is like really taught to you, which is kind of cool because you're now a professor, like you said, in the Entrepreneurship College. So tell us a little bit more. So after you started doing your gaming and selling to your friends, how long did that business last before they shut you down?
Oh, probably about 6 months or
wow.
Something like that. I did quite well, and then I lived pretty close to the school bus stop. So what I did was after school, I would set up a TV in the garage, a couple of TVs and gaming consoles, and then while kids were getting out of school, they were walking to the bus stop, I would charge I don't remember how much, but it wasn't a lot, to go and like play different games for a while. So I kept it going for a while. Then my parents got a little bit miffed that the garage was being used and things like that, so they cut it off.
So normal kids are selling lemonade at 10 years old, and you're over here renting out your video games.
I was renting out video games, yep.
I mean, that's a smart journey. So after that, how long before you went into your next entrepreneurship?
I was always doing different things throughout high school, and then definitely in college. I was getting my degree, a bachelor's degree in marketing and an undergrad in finance, and I connected with different entrepreneurs in the university that I was in. One time we were flipping cars, and so we were buying cars and selling cars and doing that. But we were always doing different kinds of side hustles and different things like that. We didn't really think about it as entrepreneurship back then. We just figured we were just like making money doing different things. But that was one thing that I've basically done my whole life, is seeing opportunity and problems that people are having and try to monetize fixing their problems.
I think that's a very good way, especially in like society. I mean, back then, obviously, it was not like a whole big thing as it is today, but a lot of people are kind of just like dropping out of college and going that route. So I feel like it's really cool because a lot of people are like born with that. I know that you started RedEye here in Tallahassee.
I did.
And that was based on sustainability. I've taken multiple of your classes based on sustainability. Was that something that was like I know you're very passionate about it now, but when you started RedEye, like what inspired that?
I started RedEye because I sold my company in California in 2002 and then moved to Florida in 2003. And I was going to just do nonprofit work. I thought that I was done with business. But I realized really quickly that a lot of things that I'm passionate about, I'm really passionate about global impact and things like that. But there just wasn't really a lot of money to do it. So I wanted to figure out, like, how could I drive money to local and global humanitarian causes that I was passionate about. So I met a local roaster here in Tallahassee who did not know how to sell coffee, and I didn't know how to roast coffee at the time, but I did know how to sell things. So I bought $20 worth of coffee from him, about 5 pounds of coffee, and then I put it in smaller bags. And then I went, basically like the Girl Scouts, I went to my friends and family and said, hey, if you buy coffee from me, 100% of the proceeds will go to local and global empowerment charities. So that's how it started, and I did that, and it kept on growing. And then I had the opportunity to open a brick and mortar in Midtown, and that was our first location. And we got to do more and more and more. And my education really grew as I would go to Guatemala or different places where we were buying coffee, and I would encounter kind of how coffee was being grown and the negative environmental impact that it was having. And then I was also seeing firsthand the negative social impact that it was having. And one of the transformational kind of moments in my life, actually two, one environmental and one social. I'll start with the social one. I was in a coffee field that RedEye was buying coffee from, and I noticed a little girl. She was picking coffee, and I walked over and I just started picking coffee with her, and I was just talking with her, and she was probably around 10 years old. And just happened to be that some children were walking to school, and I asked her, I said, well, why aren't you going to school? And she said, well, I don't go to school. My family needs me to work the field so we can eat. And that little girl put this 230-pound man on his back. I'm like, oh my gosh, we're charging people $5, $6 for a cup of coffee in Tallahassee so we can do charity, and we're exploiting this little girl who can't even go to school. And I came back to Tallahassee and met with my leadership, and I said, we're not doing this anymore. We're not going to exploit children so people can have lattes. We need to figure out a way to create an ethical supply chain. Then the other thing is there's a beautiful lake in Guatemala called Lake Antiguan, and it's surrounded by 7 volcanoes. It's absolutely gorgeous. And I would buy a lot of coffee in that region, and we used to love just like swimming in the lake. It was beautiful and everything. I went there one time, and it was just bubbling with this green algae. No. And so, and there's like fish that were dead because they couldn't get oxygen and everything. And I found out it was because the commercial farming, all the fertilizers were running down into the lake. And they're like, yeah, this happens every single year. It's basically killed a lot of our fish and everything. I'm like, wait, so same kind of story. I'm like, okay, we're going 100% organic. We're only going to sell organic coffee and tea at RedEye, and we're not going to do that anymore.
I think that's very impressive that like you are so hands-on in your business, because I feel like a lot of people with like multi-million-dollar companies or even small companies in general don't go to where like you said, you're going and picking coffee with this little girl, and that's how you knew. So like I can see your passion. I was taking your classes. We took sustainable enterprise market problems and all that stuff. And I could tell that you were very passionate about it. And I know eventually you ended up selling RedEye Coffee.
I did.
But you could still tell like how passionate you were when speaking about it, or even right now when you're speaking about it. So I think that's something that like a bunch of entrepreneurs need to do and go through, just like being hands-on in their company. Well, so tell me about the company you had prior to 2002. We like passed over that.
So it was a very unsustainable company. I was born into it. My dad actually started it. And it was renting heavy equipment, boom lifts, scissor lifts, and forklifts. And then I eventually took it over and ran it for about 10 years and then sold it in 2002. I was in the company for about 15, maybe 17 years.
And this is when you lived in California?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, I was in Long Beach, California.
Okay. Wow, 10 years. I mean, and then that switch to coffee is actually...
No, I have a crazy resume.
Yeah.
And, but I think that's one thing that's really interesting in life. And one thing that I think students who, are 20, 22 and just graduating, I think a lot of times it seems like a lot of students put a lot of pressure on themselves, or somebody else is putting pressure on themselves to like, what are you going to do for the rest of your life? And I've had lots of different careers. I mean, they're pretty long usually. About 10 years is kind of like I do something for about 10 years and then go do something else. But I think that's really normal and really healthy, and just kind of like going to, you're going to have, as you grow, as you learn, you're going to have different passions and do different things. And that's one thing that I'm really excited about now is being able to share my knowledge and passion, as you mentioned, for creating a better form of capitalism that redefines profit in the sense of your impact socially and environmentally.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate that. And so going back to when you went to university, what university did you actually attend?
So I've attended several. I went to, my original degree out of high school, I went to the Fashion Institute of Design and Merchandising. Nice. And I wanted to be a buyer. And I got my associates in merchandise marketing. And I always use that when you're in a group of people with a bunch of new people, and that game where it's like put in a fact about yourself that nobody can guess. I always put the
two truths and a lie.
And I'm a graduate of the Fashion Institute, or alumni of the Fashion Institute of Design and Merchandising, and nobody ever guesses me. So I don't know what that says about my fashion sense now, but that's definitely part of my life. And then I went to a small liberal arts college in Burbank, California. It's called Woodbury University, and that's where I got my undergrad degree.
Okay. In marketing, you said.
Yeah, in marketing, and then a minor in finance. And that minor in finance has served me very, very well.
Yeah. Probably do that.
And then I have 2 master's degree. I have a master's degree in religion. Okay. And I also have a master's graduate certificate from Harvard University in entrepreneurship and innovation.
Nice.
And then I have my doctorate degree from George Fox University in Portland, Oregon. And that's in organizational management.
You've been all over the map.
All over the map. All over the map.
Well, nice. So then now that I forgot to move back to myself, so I have to edit that. Okay. Wow. Now I'm okay, I did have a question for you. I was gonna say, should I ask this question? Do you believe that any part of how you were raised plays a role in wanting to start your own business? Or is that like, we kind of talked about that already?
Yeah, no, that's a good question.
Okay. So now that we talk, hold on. Okay. So now that we talked about every single thing that you did eventually accomplish throughout your time in education, actually, I do want to ask you this. There's a lot of stigma around those that are entrepreneurial. Is that how you say that?
Yeah.
Entrepreneurial. And they're like, how do I word this? I have it here. Stereotype that entrepreneurs don't believe in the school system. Okay. So now I do want to ask you a question now that we talked about your education and you got all the way to your doctorate program, which is very impressive, especially like the range of education and majors and degrees that you do have. I did want to bring up this stereotype that there is in the entrepreneurship kind of realm nowadays. A lot of people believe that they don't believe in the education system, and a lot of people are on social media now saying that you don't need a degree and you don't need all of these valuables. Do you think your degree helped you? Like you said, your finance degree did help you a lot in making who you are today. Like, do you think a degree is necessary?
I don't think a degree is necessary in entrepreneurship, but I think that it can be really, really helpful. Being, part of the faculty of Jim Moran College of Entrepreneurship, a lot of people ask me, can you teach entrepreneurship? And this is kind of how I view it is, can you teach, let's say, basketball? And can you teach somebody to be Michael Jordan? Well, Michael Jordan has a lot of natural ability. And if I had the exact same coaches as Michael Jordan, I would still never make it to the NBA.
Yeah.
Nobody would say that I'm the GOAT, things like that. But Michael Jordan would be, he was cut from his high school basketball team. I don't know if you know that.
Yeah.
And he credits his coaches that helped him become who we all know him to be.
Yeah.
So could Michael Jordan have been everything that we know he is and accomplished without coaches? And I would say probably not. And I think he would say probably not. Or he wouldn't have. So I look at it as I'm a coach, and not all coaches are Michael Jordans too, right? There's a lot of great coaches who just never were really great basketball players, world-class basketball players. And I think, I was a pretty good entrepreneur, but I was never like Elon Musk or Steve Jobs or anything like that. But I still can coach. I can still see, I know the fundamentals, and I can give feedback to help people who want to be entrepreneurs. I can help them be better than probably they would be without me or other coaches that we have in this college.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the way I look at it. I think coaches are very, very valuable in business and personal life, in sports and things like that.
Yeah.
And so that's the way I look at it. Also, there's so many tools now in entrepreneurship that I didn't have access to. And I really believe if there was a Jim Moran College of Entrepreneurship in the 90s when I was in college, and if I went to the Jim Moran College of Entrepreneurship instead of the College of Business, that I would have been a much better entrepreneur. I would have been able to avoid a lot of costly mistakes that I made if I had those coaches around me.
I agree. I think a lot of becoming somewhere is passion and motivation, but you're right, coaches do. I think that you out of everyone would know and can kind of tell who has their heart in it right from meeting them. Or if somebody had told you, this is what I want to do, you can tell them this is right or wrong. I think that is something necessary kind of education-wise, like you said, like a coach to be there for. I did want to ask you if you had any advice for any entrepreneurs, what would it be?
It would really depend on the entrepreneur and what they want to do, and definitely probably that would be really identify. Do you want to create a global company, or do you want to be a lifestyle entrepreneur? Is this something that do you want to open a store and go there every day? And to me, that's every bit as legitimate as starting Tesla or SpaceX or something like that. They're just different, and there's different types of entrepreneurs, and some we know their names, and others we wouldn't know their names unless we were in their local community. But I believe these local entrepreneurs actually probably make our personal lives a lot richer than probably the SpaceX and all that, which those things are great and everything. But I think the people who are really make our lives interesting and make our communities interesting are these local entrepreneurs.
100%. I agree. Like, I think your community is what kind of makes your life, if that makes sense.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. What about the entrepreneurs that will never start because they're afraid to fail?
Yeah, they already failed then.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of the mindset that we're all going to fail at something. And some of those failures are public and those, those, none of us want to do that. But the reality is that every entrepreneur fails along the way. And it may, at some level. And if you don't fail, then you're not pushing yourself, and then you're failing yourself. And that's, I think, actually worse. I used to ski, snow ski all the time. And if I went the whole day without falling, I would count that a day as kind of a failure because I didn't get any better. I just stayed within my comfort zone. The only way that you grow is if you fall and you get back up. You learn from falling, right? You learn from pain. You learn from adversity in our lives. And in fact, I have a Serbian friend. He just moved from Serbia about 6 months ago, and I played beach volleyball with him and everything. We went to Jacksonville last weekend. I was going to teach him to surf, and then we played some volleyball. And he said something. He's like, in Serbia, that's my best Serbian, right? We have a saying, or he was saying, we have a saying that hard times make strong people, and easy times make soft people. And I think there's really true. Like, I think that the more adversity that you go through, and none of us like adversity, but we learn from adversity. We don't learn from when things are easy, because when things are easy, we're just on cruise control.
Yeah.
And it's just one of these, hard things in life. And if you really want to be great in what you're going to do, you're gonna fail, because in that failure, in that pain, you learn. Some of the greatest business people I know went bankrupt, and once they came out of bankruptcy, they have a drive in them. Like, I am never going to do that again. I will never be bankrupt again. I'm not going to make the same mistakes. And I've never been through bankruptcy, thank goodness. So I don't have that.
Yeah.
But I have very successful friends who lost everything, and they came back, and they have a drive that I do not have.
Yeah. It's like when you're at the bottom, there's only up.
Right.
When you're like in the middle, you're not trying as hard to get as high as they are.
Yeah. Now there's something really hard about having just enough to be happy, and contentment, and that's okay too. Like, if somebody's content with where they're at, then that's great. But I think, Steve, like, if you think like people we know, like, we were talking about Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan was never content, right?
Yeah.
Kobe Bryant was never content. Steve Jobs was never content. Elon Musk was never content. And that's a two-edged sword, right? Because they're never content, right?
Yeah.
It's never enough. They're always wanting to drive for the next thing. So I've heard Elon Musk on a lot of podcasts. He always says, "You wouldn't want to be me."
Yeah.
Right? And I was like, oh, Elon Musk. Well, the man is tortured. He's tortured by, like, wanting to do more and more and more. And it's never going to be enough for him. And it's just that's another hard thing to, that I think people who are great and are great at what they do have that, but it's also a curse.
It is a curse, because you're in the public eye at that point. Like, the level of success that they have, they're straight in the public, and I think they hold themselves to these like unattainable goals and statues and all these things that we don't notice, because we're like, I wish that I had 100 billion or however much they have. But
like The Rock right now, I don't know if you know this, but he has this drive to become a billionaire. And I think he's like $150 million away from being a billionaire. And I kind of worry for him because, not that The Rock needs me worrying about him, but it's like, okay, he has $850 million right now. Is him becoming a billionaire going to change his life at all? Like, then what's next, right? And again, that's great. If he wants to do that, and he wants to do it in an ethical way, which I think he is, there's no indication that he's not, then go for it if you think that that's going to be it. But I would bet $1 billion that when he hits $1 billion, he's going to want something else. And right now, as you know, you're in the podcast class, and I want this podcast to hit 10,000 downloads, and trying to drive toward that. So when we hit 10,000 downloads, am I going to be all right? Good, we did it. No, I'm going to want to hit 25,000, right? So I think there's a healthy part of that, right? That it's like, hey, you know what? People are listening. That's cool. It gives energy and stuff like that. I think I've been doing the goal thing long enough now to know that if I'm not happy doing it at 100, 1,000, 10,000, 25,000, it doesn't matter if I'm Joe Rogan. I'm not going to be happy. I got to be happy with sitting down and learning and talking with people and learning from them, and hopefully other people are learning, and it's kind of fun. I don't make any money from podcasting, but now I get to teach podcasting, and you guys are doing your own podcasts, and you're the host, and I'm a guest, and I feel a lot of satisfaction. I would do the same thing if only my mom listened, but it's exciting to me that hey, you know what, 400, 500 people listen to each episode, and they probably won't listen anymore after this. But
no. Well, I thought it was a very important thing that your viewers, that you come and sit with daily and put all your effort into, and so much so that you do have this podcast class, needed to know a little bit more about you. And when I asked you, you were like, no. But I'm like, you started my entrepreneurship journey. You were one of the first professors that I had. This is my minor, for those of you that may not know, but this is my minor, and the majority of our class is majoring in entrepreneurship. But you kind of started my journey and opened my eyes to what the world could be in a sustainable and ethical way, like you said. And I see so many companies, they're huge, but if you're exploiting children, or you're exploiting your workers, even if they're not children, or you're doing things that are not sustainable, that we've learned in our market classes, even going in and digging up H&M, things like that.
Yeah.
I don't want to do it either. So I feel like even if you touch one person, you're making a difference in someone's life, and you might see it or you might not. And I feel like you should have some satisfaction in that.
No, I absolutely do. And I think right now, like in this chapter of my life, and if I can influence students and other business people to think about their businesses as a force for good, and really look at their global supply chain and things like that, and been able to model that hey, you can do that and be monetarily successful. You can do both.
Yeah.
That if I can influence that in any way, I think that's a pretty cool thing to be dedicated to right now.
Thank you so much, Mark, for coming into the hot seat today. I had so much fun being your host and learning a lot about you.
Oh, thank you so much, Rosella. It was so much fun and being a guest on the InNOLEvation Mindset, and you did such a great job.
Thank you for tuning in to the InNOLEvation Mindset, powered by the Moran College of Entrepreneurship. If you liked it, please like, comment, and subscribe. Comment, because we love to read those, and subscribe so you don't miss another episode. Yay!